Welcome back. You're not watching the lifestyle segment on the weekend show brought to you by Holo Crunch Popcorn. Today on the lifestyle segment, we will be discussing with an author, an educator, a great guest has been on this show over again, and each time she comes, we always have great conversation. It's my pleasure to introduce Anuli Anebo Olaniyi, founder here Women Development, and importantly, the author of More Than Just Pretty. Welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you so much, Andy. Good morning, everyone.
Right, so good to see you again.
Good to see you, Andy.
Congratulations on your book, More Than Just Pretty.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Tell us about this book.
So More Than Just Pretty is a book that catalogues my stories while growing up, from girl to young woman in Nigeria, facing challenges and barriers, and just a few lessons I've learned along the way so far, because I'm still learning, and how girls and young women can, apply this knowledge that I've gathered so far to, implement in their own lives. It's more than just pretty because I feel a sense of need to educate everyone about what it means to have a nice facial structure, body structure, as opposed to what you have inside of you. I'm trying to re-educate young girls and young women to see that what is inside of you is actually what lasts longer, is what you should look out for. So in the book, I talk about things like, what label are you giving yourself? I talk about spirituality. I talk about financial literacy. I talk about career development. I talk about leadership. I talk about even your bucket list. I talk about finding who you really are. I talk about entitlement and validation. So there are things that I have come to realize that if the society gives you a certain way and say this is how you're supposed to look, and if you are in my type of shoes and you have the kind of skin color I have, or you sort of look like me, there's something people say is pretty privilege, and that's not actually favorable for people like us. Because when I go into an establishment to do an interview or to do a presentation or to do some, good work, and I'm just judged based on how I look and not my intelligence, it's quite discriminatory. So the book is really all about that, and trying to say to girls and young women that you really need to add more value to who you really are, because that's your staying power. The sexiest part of a woman is her intelligence.
I think it's important that you are having this conversation in your book, and it's one of those which we must have, because the life of a girl child globally, you're born into a world of inequalities by default, and in Nigeria we have the issue where in most cases the male child will be sent to school before the female child is sent to school, and then society and stereotypes just places her in a position to grow up to become a woman and a mother and a wife, and then you have children, and if anything goes wrong, you see what your child has done, see what your woman has done. And so let's talk about womanhood and the life of a mother, for instance. In most cases, just like how people discriminate against those with a pretty face and just expect, and so you hear phrases like beauty with brains, like it's an anomaly. How does this affect the girl child in the society? Does this reduce the bar, or does this create a need to do more?
I think it's both, really, because when a girl child is growing up and she is attributed to some global standards of beauty, and I say global standards of beauty because somebody has defined what beauty should look like in the pages of the magazine, on social media, on different apps. Somebody somewhere is controlling what we are supposed to be looking like, right? And then those young girls grow up and see that there is pressure to look like that, but that's not reality. And then the pressure to look like that is more emphasized when globally people are sort of, if you like, cashing in from such looks. And when it comes to the influence of having intelligence, being hardworking, all the great values and ethics that we've historically had growing up is eroded, because you find that, I always make this good example, when I do a lot of educative videos and all, I really don't get people watching what I'm saying, You can't compare what I do to other people who decide that they want to show. I mean, everybody has a right to do what they want to do, but I don't encourage that, because young girls are seeing you displaying, parts of you that are not supposed to be displayed. And you get a lot of likes from that, and they think it's norm. So it's more difficult now going out and saying, listen, young girl, go to school, be educated, face your work, be hardworking. And they look at you and think, they kind of scan you, and then they scan somebody else who is probably not saying the same thing, right? But looks good. They're like, ma'am, I mean, like, you have, what is the value of what you're saying? So the girls who are growing right now, my heart goes out to them, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is to at least make some sort of impact. If a lot of us make this impact, we will be able to help the generation. But girls are in the world we are right now. There's a lot more work for all of us to do.
Let's talk about a serious conversation. I mean, this is all serious, but a conversation which I find quite serious, because it's one of which I would have avoided ideally, and this is the issue of the underage children who were captured on tape, and it was released all over social media just last week. We want to start by saying possession and sharing of any child sexual related content is illegal, against the law, and you could be prosecuted for it. As simple as sharing a video of children involved in sexual acts or the likes is illegal and unacceptable. It shouldn't be on your mobile devices, any electronic devices. It's illegal, it's against the law, and it's also unfair to the children. So let's get that clear. All of it is illegal. You shouldn't have it, you shouldn't possess it, you shouldn't share. It's illegal. Children these days have a lot of influences, and so when I was growing up, socialization process was the family, the school, the church, then media, or the religious institution, then media. It feels like media, being social media and technology, is now replacing the role of parenting. And then besides what the parents may do at home, children have access to these devices, which exposes them to even more. Just about 2 weeks ago, Kim Kardashian, her son was watching stuff on a tablet, and then sexual content from her past was advertised to the son, and the son had to show her. So regardless of what the parent does, they still have this other exposure. So let's start with access to technology for children. How do we navigate that?
Very important conversation, Andy. When this news broke, it's not the first time I'm talking about digitization of parenting, in my opinion. I am also a tutor, for Start Right Day Secondary School, and a tutor of leadership and life skills. And I did create a curriculum for digital media, so I can educate my students about the pros and the cons of social media. And I found out that when we started, I started teaching 3 years ago, the age limit for the social media apps were 14, 15, 16. Andy, it is dropped. Do you know how I know it's dropped? Because my new year 7 students, I always give them an assignment to go and look for the age restriction, to also speak to their conscience that you're not supposed to be on WhatsApp, you're not supposed to be on this, you're not supposed to. So we do like an investigation, my students and I. They came back to tell me that, Miss Angali, it's now, I think, 12 plus or 13.
Yeah, 13 in most cases.
It's dropped, because that's not where we started 3 years ago. Now, the work for guardians, parents, custodians, elder ones has increased, because digitally, we have to become more smart. Now, let me just take the app in question that was used, that this children or the young girl was using. Is called Likey. Now, Likey is an app that is a rival to TikTok. So basically acts like TikTok. The age restriction for Likey is 17 plus, Andy, but it is not verified. Parents cannot actually check on what their kids are doing. If you want to put parental restrictions, it does not work. Likey is known globally as a pedophile's paradise. Likey allows you to get private messages, putting any kind of videos, and a lot of it is quite erotic. Likey enables you to make money on the video. So obviously the more likes you get, the more money you make, right? So all these apps are there. Our children are hearing that other people are having these apps. Parents now have to do extra work. Now you can just imagine having to deal with the economy, having to deal with being a parent, societal expectation, then apps for our children. So what these apps do for us is it limits us if it is that we do not take an extra step to find out what they are about. What is TikTok about? What is Instagram about? What is Twitter about? What is like, where are you? For me, I do not think that children should be giving leverage to access those apps. Even WhatsApp is dangerous because you cannot control what content somebody forwards to you if you're in groups. It may not even be videos of a sexual nature. It might be gruesome videos where people are being shot or killed or beaten up. And you haven't had the opportunity to educate your child about it. Your child sees it. And I know some of my students will be like, Miss Angeli, my parents let me use it when they're supervising me. I'm like, oh, that's very good. And in our school, we ensure that we have a digital department, and the person ensures that they speak to the parents about the issues of digital media because they're real. Now, I try to balance my when I talk to my students or talk to other people. There's a good side. You can make great change. You can change the world. But there are people out there who are they impersonize young faces. And one of the great psychologists, I forget his name right now, who was investigating Likey, did that because his 10-year-old got sent a picture of a private part of a man. And when he went investigating, he found out that there was no restriction. Even when he, as a parent, tried to restrict his child on the Likey app, he found out that it was not. He couldn't. So if a child comes and says, I'm 17 plus, you can't verify the age of the child. Again, it comes back to us. Now, if you look at it and say, we're adults, what are we modeling at the end of the day? What are we really modeling? You've seen videos around after that incident about young children grinding on top of themselves, dancing in a provocative manner. Where do they see these things, right? Unpopular opinion is that when you do music videos, the women are totally naked, maybe covering some parts. The men are fully clothed. And the main kind of erotic dancing is twerking. And these children pick it up. And then when they're in parties, they're demonstrating such actions. It is some of the adults who are cheering them on and clapping for them and doing all sorts. So the 21st century parenting, we have a lot to do from a digital point of view. We have to look through all these apps. If possible, restrict the apps. A child is not going to, they'll be more distracted. I've had children come back from school and what they picked up from the playground is what they come home with. And they come to you as a parent to ask you questions about that. I've had children ask about TikTok. Oh, there's a TikTok app where you can pay to view. I'm like, pay to view who? You know, so it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a triggering subject, especially because these children and the society, especially the Nigerian society, is known for stigmatizing women and girls, and it was quite disheartening to see that after that incident, which and thanks to everybody who didn't watch it. I saw on social media, and this is the first time I'm even having this conversation about it, because I just felt it's just unfair to everybody involved. But I saw the needle and the bar shift constantly, and there was a lot of blame on the girl, even though male kids were involved. There was a lot of focus on the mother not raising her well, and so male boys were involved, they have fathers, hopefully, but the mother and the daughter were the ones being blamed. How do we rejig this narrative where, in a case such as that, it's only the woman who is to, even in the Bible, when the adulterous woman was about to be stoned, she committed these acts with men, but it was the woman who was being stoned. How do we shift this narrative and, besides that, train our male children better?
Very good point. I thought about that as well. But, permit me to say that boys and men are privileged in our society. Always have been, and to a large extent always will be. Having a conversation with a friend of mine who has 3 sons, mothers of today have a lot more work to do to re-educate their sons, to do intentional parenting and re-educate their sons differently. But the society will tell them otherwise, because historically it's not that way. Men and women are not supposed to be dominated or oppressed. One gender isn't better than the other. But in looking at issues, you need to be objective about it. And because women, like you said, have always been vilified for God knows how long, it's going to take a long time. Now, how do we begin to curb it? Is to be honest, I know that it sounds cliche to say, keep speaking up about it. But that is the major actions. And then I believe in changing social norms. For example, in our schools, what are we educating our students? What are we saying, or who are we saying is more important? I was privileged to do a project that talked about the prevalence of sexual harassment in workplaces, and I carried out the research here in FCT. 1,000 respondents, over 51% of the women said that they've been sexually harassed by male bosses, right? I mean, you ask them why, it's like the society just expects that as a woman, you're stereotyped.
So you should expect it, and it's up to you to fight
You're
it.
put in a box. You're put in a box, Andy. I'm put in a box. I'm put in a box. If it is, I come and say, I work hard and I do. Tomorrow, just do like, how they say, yimu, like, yeah, right, you know. A woman attained a high position in our country. What's the first question she's asked?
Who did she have to bed to get that?
Who did she have to bed to get that? Nobody talks about her intelligence. Nobody talks about her hard work. Everything is carpeted because the thinking and the norm and the mindset is very masculine. Our norms are masculine norms. So it goes a long way for us to begin to re-educate, begin to unlearn what we have. And you know that a lot more people are comfortable in this kind of socialization because it benefits them. If something doesn't benefit you, you will not be comfortable with it. So women who have sons will be like, wow, okay, let me begin to re-educate my son to do this, respect women, to not do this and stuff like that. And then those who have daughters, let me begin to educate my daughters. But there's a chance that the mother or the father might be expecting that this kind of things will be meted on the daughter. So I am not shy to advocate for women to be bold, to speak up. I run self-defense classes, and I was vilified for running self-defense classes for young women and saying you're teaching women how to be violent. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything that a woman does is vilified, is unacceptable. But it's acceptable for the man to do that.
Let's talk about deterrence. I grew up in an era where we were pretty much whooped and whooped hard. And if your parents aren't doing it, your neighbors are whooping you on behalf of your parents, the uncles and aunties. I grew up in an era where the church would say, spare the rod and spoil the child, train the child in the way he should be, and when he grows, he wouldn't depart from it. 21st century parenting is different. You can't necessarily physically discipline your child anymore, but there must be deterrence. While we talk about rewards and incentives, there must be deterrence. How do you advise deterrence in a world like this where children have so much access to information? We need to protect their rights because we need to avoid them going through a lot of trauma, which some of us have had to go through as a result of the way we were brought up, in a way where it enforced discipline, but it now has some other effects on people. How do you advise with deterrence when it comes to parenting?
I think what I find so far that has worked is communicating with your children. That's what I found. Communicating with your children. This is happening. This is the reason why it's happening. This is why it's happening. Do not do this because of X, Y, Z. I think I got a whooping as well because I went to military school. So I know what that whooping feels like.
military father.
My dad was in the military as well, you know. But my mom was the one who was doing more of the whooping because she was a calm gentleman. And that's how she was raised as well.
Yeah.
You whoop a child and it corrects you to an extent, but it doesn't necessarily, because at some point you'd be like, at the end of the day, it's a few strokes of the cane. I will just do what I need to do and come and collect the strokes of the cane. That's different now, like you said. But communication, whether we like it or not, we have to communicate. We have to now research on what's going on globally. We cannot close our eyes and say, hide in a church pew and decide that this will not come, because it will come, definitely.
Emily, what's your message with this book? What is the message? What are you trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is, be more than average. Be more than mediocre. Be more than expected. If you go into a place, perform more than you're expected. Do not put all of your looks as the legal tender. When you get into a room, let people remember that you came there because you had something in your head, because of your intelligence, your charisma, your character, humility, your respectability, you know. Please, this book is here to educate, or should I say re-educate and prepare girls and young women to think differently about the future. That's what I want this book to say. It's really more than just pretty.
Where can this book be found?
This book is worldwide. Well, in Abuja, in Nigeria, it's in Roving Heights bookstore.
I like Roving Heights.
Yes, they're one of my best as well. I buy a lot of books from them. So it's in Roving Heights in Lagos and Abuja. You can order and they will deliver. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Physical copies. It's also Amazon Kindle. If you're an ebook person, it's on BAM Books, it's on Booktopia, it's on Cover Books app. So we are really worldwide.
Anuli Anebo Ola Olani, More Than Just Pretty, out now in stores. Thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Your comments on parenting, motherhood, and constantly speaking to children on your role in educating. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
Always a pleasure, Andy. Thank you so much.
To our viewers at home, that's the much we can take on this segment. But don't go away. We do have more on the weekend show coming up next.